And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei Al Bob. I is he here to tell you a story. What is Christmas?
With activists who are protesting Cop City. This new world begins in Gaza, but it ends at home. Just as Trump is a symptom of our decayed and anemic democracy, the attack on October 7th is a reaction. You can't isolate it. If you look at any uprising against a colonial project, any of them, they lash out with a kind of inchoate fury. I mean, what did Nat Turner do? Nat Turner killed every white person he saw. Now, I'm not defending it. To understand it is not to condone it, but you can't isolate it. If you look at Reed C.L.R. James's great history of Black Jacobins of the Haitian slave revolt, the only successful slave revolt in human history, and Haiti's been paying for it ever since, James is very sympathetic, but he doesn't whitewash the torture and atrocities that were committed against the French planter class. He has a wonderful line, these are I'm going to butcher it, but it's something like, these are the momentary eruptions of an oppressed people rather than the institutionalized torture and atrocity of the state. Even in the French Revolution, you had clergy and aristocrats had their heads severed and were carried around on pikes through the streets of Paris. This is what happens when you brutalize a people over a long period of time, which I'm not defending it. There's two things that, one, those who carry out atrocities should be held accountable, whoever they are, and not murdering 6,000 children who had nothing to do with it. Most of the people killed in Gaza, very few, as far as we can tell, very few Hamas fighters have been killed. Why is Israel flattening Gaza? Because they don't want to go into the tunnels. So they'll just kill all the Palestinians. They won't go into those tunnels. And of course, it's a conscious effort to destroy an infrastructure which makes life sustainable. That's why they destroy the hospitals. So an appropriate response should have been, done decades ago. This sadly is where we've ended up. But you can't, as Pope Francis said, you can't commit terror in response to terror. But that's been this kind of cycle of violence that has been perpetuated since before Israel's founding. I mean, I just want to say that, when the problem without context is that you see a reaction that's brutal, but you don't see the long, slow drip of oppression that created it. And so to those who don't understand that oppression and haven't covered it, which is most of the media, what they see is incomprehensible. And therefore, they certify those people who carried out that action as incomprehensible. And that comes essentially with the conscious decision on the part of the major media not to tell the truth. They don't use the word apartheid. They don't use the word genocide. They sanitize the vocabulary in such a way as to obscure the reality. And so when something like this happens, it's a shock because nobody's been paying attention to Gaza. And this is the frustration that I and other reporters had reporting week after week, month after month after. We saw it. We knew what was going to happen. It wasn't a surprise, but the world wasn't listening. Certainly those in power were not listening. The zealots in power in Israel could have exchanged the hostages held by Hamas for the thousands of Palestinian hostages held in Israeli prisons, which is why the Israeli hostages were seized. And there is evidence that in the chaotic fighting that took place once Hamas militants entered Israel, the Israeli military decided to target not only Hamas fighters, but the Israeli captives with them. Several new testimonies by Israeli witnesses to the October 7th Hamas attack on southern Israel adds to the growing evidence that the Israeli military killed its own citizens as they fought to neutralize Palestinian gunmen, Max Blumenthal writes in the Gray Zone. Tuval Escapa, a member of a security team for Kibbutz Beria set up a hotline to coordinate between kibbutz residents and the Israeli army. He told the Israeli newspaper Haaretz that as desperation began to set in, quote, the commanders in the field made difficult decisions, including shelling houses on their occupants in order to eliminate the terrorists along with the hostages. The newspaper reported that Israeli commanders were, quote, compelled to request an airstrike against its own facility inside the Erez crossing to Gaza in, quote, in order to repulse the terrorists who had seized control. The base housed Israeli civil administration, officers, and soldiers. Israel in 1986 introduced a military policy called the Hannibal Directive, apparently named for the Carthaginian general who poisoned himself rather than be captured by the Romans. Following the capture of 2 Israeli soldiers by Hezbollah, the directive is designed to prevent Israeli troops from falling into enemy hands through the maximum use of force, even at the cost of killing the captured soldiers and civilians. The directive was executed during the 2014 Israeli assault on Gaza, known as Operation Protective Edge. Hamas fighters on August 1st, 2014, captured an Israeli officer, Lieutenant Hadar Golden. In response, Israel dropped more than 2,000 bombs, missiles, and shells on the area where he was being held. Golden was killed, along with over 100 Palestinian civilians. The directive was supposedly rescinded in 2016, but I'm nearly certain it is being applied to the 138 remaining Israeli hostages in Gaza. I returned a few days ago from Egypt. On the flight, I wrote a letter to the children of Gaza, and I would like to close my talk with this letter. Dear child, it is past midnight. I am flying at hundreds of miles an hour in the darkness, thousands of feet over the Atlantic Ocean. I am traveling to Egypt. I will go to the border of Gaza at Rafah. I go because of you. You have never been in a plane. You have never left Gaza. You know only the densely packed streets and alleys, the concrete hovels. You know only the security barriers and fences patrolled by soldiers that surround Gaza. Planes for you are terrifying. Fighter jets, attack helicopters, drones. They circle above you. They drop missiles and bombs. Deafening explosions. The ground shakes. Buildings fall. The dead. The screams. The muffled calls for help from beneath the rubble. It does not stop. Night and day. Trapped under the piles of smashed concrete. Your playmates. Your schoolmates. Your neighbors. Gone in seconds. You see the chalky faces and limp bodies when they are dug out. I am a reporter. It is my job to see this. You are a child. You should never see this. The stench of death, rotting corpses under the broken concrete. You hold your breath. You cover your mouth with a cloth. You walk faster. Your neighborhood has become a graveyard. All that was familiar is gone. You stare in amazement. You wonder where you are. You are afraid. Explosion after explosion. You cry. You cling to your mother or father. You cover your ears. You see the white light of the missile and wait for the blast. Why do they kill children? What did you do? Why can't anyone protect you? Will you be wounded? Will you lose a leg or an arm? Will you go blind or be in a wheelchair? Why were you born? Was it for something good, or was it for this? Will you grow up? Will you be happy? What will it be like without your friends? Who will die next? Your mother? Your father? Your brothers and sisters? Someone you know will be injured soon. Someone you know will die soon. At night you lie in the dark on the cold cement floor. The phones are cut. The internet is off. You do not know what is happening. There are flashes of light. There are waves of blast concussions. There are screams. It does not stop. When your father or mother hunts for food or water, you wait. That terrible feeling in your stomach. Will they come back? Will you see them again? Will your tiny home be next? Will the bombs find you? Are these your last moments on earth? You drink salty, dirty water. It makes you very sick. Your stomach hurts. You are hungry. The bakeries are destroyed. There is no bread. You eat one meal a day, pasta, a cucumber. Soon, this will seem like a feast. You do not play with your soccer ball made of rags. You do not fly your kite made from old newspapers. You have seen foreign reporters. We wear flak jackets with the word press written on them. We have helmets. We have cameras. We drive jeeps. We appear after a bombing or a shooting. We sit over a coffee for a long time and talk to the adults. Then we disappear. We do not usually interview children. But I have done interviews when groups of you crowded around us, laughing, pointing, asking us to take your picture. I have been bombed by jets in Gaza. I have been bombed in other wars that happened before you were born. I, too, was very, very scared. I still have dreams about it. When I see the pictures of Gaza, these wars return to me with a force of thunder and lightning. I think of you. All of us who've been to war hate war most of all because of what it does to children. I tried to tell your story. I tried to tell the world that when you are cruel to people, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade, when you deny people freedom and dignity, when you humiliate and trap them in an open-air prison, when you kill them as if they were beasts, they become very angry. They do to others what was done to them. I told it over and over. I told it for 7 years. Few listened. And now this. There are very brave Palestinian journalists. 50 of them have been killed since this bombing began. They are heroes. So are the doctors and nurses in your hospitals. So are the UN workers, almost 100 of whom have been killed. So are the ambulance drivers and medics. So are the rescue parties that lift up the slabs of concrete with their hands. So are the mothers and fathers who shield you from the bombs. But we are not there. Not this time. We cannot get in. We are locked out. Reporters from all over the world are going to the border crossing at Rafah. We are going because we cannot watch this slaughter and do nothing. We are going because hundreds of people are dying a day, including over 100 children. We are going because this genocide must stop. We are going because we have children like you, precious, innocent, loved. We are going because we want you to live. I hope one day we will meet. You will be an adult. I will be an old man, although to you I am already very old. In my dream for you, I will find you free and safe and happy. No one will be trying to kill you. You will fly in airplanes filled with people, not bombs. You will not be trapped in a concentration camp. You will see the world. You will grow up and have children. You will become old. You will remember this suffering, but you will know it means you must help others who suffer. This is my hope, my prayer. We have failed you. This is the awful guilt we carry. We tried, but we did not try hard enough. We will go to Rafah, many of us, reporters. We will stand outside the border with Gaza and protest. We will write and film. This is what we do. It is not much, but it is something. We will tell your story again. Maybe it will be enough to earn the right to ask for your forgiveness. Thank you.
You were just listening to Chris Hedges on the Israeli-Palestinian war. He spoke at the Sanctuary for Independent Media in Troy, New York on December 6th. Chris Hedges is an award-winning independent reporter and the author of many books. His latest is The Greatest Evil is War. This program is produced by Alternative Radio. We're an independent nonprofit in our 38th year. We're supported solely by individuals just like you. We feature such voices as Norman Solomon, Umar Shaker, Noam Chomsky, Phyllis Venice, and Medea Benjamin. And we have a series of Chris Hedges programs. To access our complete audio and book catalog, just go to our website, alternativeradio.org. Again, our website where we are podcasting, alternativeradio.org. To get copies of today's program, Chris Hedges on the Israeli-Palestinian War, and for his book, The Greatest Evil is War, call us 1-800-444-1977. That's 1-800-444-1977. Or you can.
I was a photojournalist, and in 1984, I think it was, I went and photographed the Olympics in Sarajevo, in Yugoslavia. And I went a week or so before the Olympics started, right? And I took pictures of the city and the people getting ready, and I got to know people at the hotel I stayed at the coffee shop that I would go to, and I got to know those people, and I got to know other people from those people, and I got to know this one man who was a truck driver, and we talked and we talked and we talked, and he delivered things around the city, getting ready for the Olympics, but he was going to leave. He was going to not stay. It'd be too expensive for him to stay in Sarajevo for the Olympics. So he was going to leave. And he said, "Do you want to go with me?" And I said, "Sure." Because I didn't even take pictures of people running around. There are hundreds of other thousands of media doing that. No, I went with him. And we went to what was known as Crimea. No, not Crimea. It was one of the, it was the neck of the woods where Muslims live, right? And he was Muslim. And I went and spent 2 weeks with him, taking photographs of all his families and his relatives and his his friends. I got to know those people really well. And we, one day, towards the end of the time, he was going to go back to Sarajevo. I had about a week left, and I wanted to take some pictures in Sarajevo and talk to some people there. And then I was going to fly back to New York. And we went to the county seat where there was a wait and see photos of, like a drive-through photo guy that you get pictures in an hour or two. So I did. So all those pictures I took of all those folks, I had printed up very nicely, not little things, but nice things. And we went to a store where we found frames, and I got frames for everything. And I brought them back to all those people. I had a nice party, and we had a great time, and it meant so much for them because I had no real photos of their families, of their kids. I'm a good photographer. I can make you look good. And so, and I took group photos and individual photos and gave them all that. Like, it was more than 100 photos, right? And I was getting paid pretty good, and I was given a nice little, chunk of change to spend when I was there on expenses. Anyway, and I kept the negatives, and I came back. And a few years later, war broke out, and the beautiful city of Sarajevo was turned to dust. So whatever his guy's name was, he put these 77 millimeters that were like designed to shoot at airplanes, blow up airplanes. He pointed them down, and he was using them like rifles. You see some little lady with her baby carriage trying to go get food for the kids. He'd shoot a 88 millimeter shell at it, to blow up half the street. And the area that was Muslim, he sent in his death squads and killed thousands of people. So years later, I was still being a photojournalist, and I went just before I met Don, or after I met Don. And photojournalism wasn't my main thing. I'd done a few interesting shoots that I got a lot of street cred for. So I got to be part of Magnum and Lisette Modell and Carrie Brisson, who started Vogue, were my photo mentors. And they knew everybody. So I would get interesting gigs. That's how I got this gig. Because I wasn't really, I was being Mr. Electrician, I was being Mr. Artist, I was being Mr. Social Activist, I was housing the homeless. But, anyway. But when I went back in the 90s, after the war, and the United States, Kosovo, I think it's called, we obliterated the place. Right? We killed thousands of people. It's not even a blip. I went back and I shot that, and that was it. Basically, I threw my Nikon away, right? And I didn't do any more photojournalism. Period. I still took pictures, but not photojournalism. So Chris Hedges, a guy who read his letter to the little boy, he's one of the things I saw that people who were, especially war correspondents, they had they were addicted to adrenaline. I didn't like it. I didn't like the sound. I didn't like the smell. I didn't like the death. And I've seen a lot of death. I was an EMT for 3 years in upstate New York, in Borna, and and our house was right on this our firehouse. We responded to car crashes. That's 99% of what we did. In the 3 years, I never even responded to one fire. Bunch of heart attacks, car crashes. And they were terrible because it was like the 2 interstates did this instead of having a clover leaf, save a little money. Big trucks would run over little cars. There was always mommy and the babies in the little cars. They have the big trucks. Didn't even know they did it. They just kept rolling. So we took out a part of the fence so we didn't have to, everyone would be all stopped in the traffic box. So we took out a chunk of the fence so we could just get straight there. So I mean, I saw people with their heads cut off, arms missing, steering columns in their chest. There's one guy with a steering column in his chest, and he was still alive. He was in shock. He didn't feel anything. So I covered him up so he couldn't see the carnage. And we had him in we had this great device that we could stick people into that would like kind of hold everything in until they got to the hospital. So we took the steering column out and we put a plug in. I found we had a shock, for the tires. It fit exactly where the steering column was, so stuff wouldn't ooze out. And then we stuck him in the suit and it squeezed it, so it kept most of the blood inside him. And then I covered him up with a thing, when he's on the gurney. And he goes, I don't. And he was like half foot in heaven, the other. And I was saying, come on, bud, say, hey, tell me about what's it like there, that kind of stuff. And we got him to the hospital, and they got him to the operating room, but he was just so badly, he was like where his heart was. There was a big hole there. His heart was still kind of pumping. Anyway, they tried their best, but no, he did not live too long after that. So I saw a lot of carnage. So it's not like I was like skittish to blood or that, but the senselessness of it. That's why I stopped being an EMT. I was their number one boy, number one boy at keeping people alive to the hospital. And yes, we did a really great thing. I would say we got 80% of everybody there to be resurrected by the Miracle Hospital, because it was a great hospital. I mean, if we left them with just enough, they could, it was pretty amazing what they could do. So we would, I did that for 3 years. And my crew, they were like my family, more my family than my family. They loved me more than my family does. I still have a family, but they're the Walking Dead. They consider me a homeless guy. And they're all about their Audis and, their $500,000 battery operated RVs and their 6 homes, all of the above. My older sister, though, she's, I won't even go into any of that. But it's the usual suspects of a materialist world. That's what we got in America. But all that Chris talked about, that's coming here. That's coming here soon. Right? Go look at the history books and see what the Civil War was like. Right? Go look at the 4 terms that FDR was president. He had to fight off 3 different coups, 2 that almost made it. Rachel Maddow, who's I'm not a big fan of hers. She's definitely a talking head propagandist, but she's a really good scholar what she wants to be. And she looked up all that information, and she has a blog about it. There was a guy named Father Coughlin, right? Just go Google Father Coughlin. That guy had a daily listenership of 40 million people. And that's when the United States population was 120 million. So there's no difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. They both represent the same thing: corporate oligarchy, Hail Hydra. And at least Donald says what he's going to do. At least he's, they call him a liar, but he lies so much he tells the truth. I love this guy. But Joe Biden is just a cynical. He's been in the Senate for 60 years. You go look at every terrible thing that our country has done. He was the guy pushing it through the Senate. So he's like a Mitch McConnell and the other guy rolled into one with other things added on. So you have to look, Jesus Christ was born in a time just like this. He was born into, stark poverty, no room at the end. Had to basically have his first night's sleep at a cow pasture bin thing where, that's what it. So read your Bible, go read Acts, go read Mark, Luke. I like it all myself, and I particularly like the Old Testament because it's really interesting. Because the Old Testament talks about everything that's happened in the New Testament, like 700 years before it happened. It's like a time machine. It's very sci-fi. If you like sci-fi, you should like the Bible. Right? If you like words like I do, then you really do because it's all written in code. And if anyone guys want to read any of my stuff, get a hold of me at dudawake42 at email, dudawake42 at gmail. So I'll probably do one tomorrow, a show tomorrow. I'm going to be out and about. But Christmas, nah. Christmas, I don't know. I'm going to probably just stay in the woods. Right? And the next few days between Christmas and New Year's, I'm going to be staying in the woods. Right? Not talking to anybody, not doing anything. Getting ready for spring, 21st was the longest day now. The sun will be longer and longer, The days will get longer and longer, nights will get shorter and shorter. So spring is just around the corner. I look forward to seeing you. I'll catch you later. How much juice will I have left? Oh, maybe I will drop. Nah. I'll maybe see you tomorrow, but otherwise, catch you later.